I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Drapedomaniac podcast. This is our Yappo Yappa, the HDIC, that is the head Drapedomaniac in charge. And I'm here with my lovely, most spectacular wife, Angela.
Hey.
And we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. Angela and I had been trying to come up with subjects for the podcast, and I'm just now springing this on her. I would like to talk about Black love and relationships. And I don't mind telling you, we had started doing a different podcast earlier. And we actually had to cut it short. I mean, cut it way short within like the first 5 minutes. It's probably like 5 minutes, wasn't even 10 minutes. And it was because Angela and I got into a tiff. Some people say an argument, whatever, but we got into a tiff. And so we cut it short, and she said she didn't want to go on working on the podcast. As we talked about, I did a lot of talking. I did a lot of apologizing because, in retrospect, it's just like I told her. As I examined it from square one, everything that was done wrong was actually done by me. Now, I'm not one of these people that I'm like, oh, I'm just totally to blame for everything, every time, all that stuff. But I think as adults, we need to learn and recognize, and sometimes replay in our minds the way things went. Sometimes it's the other person's fault totally. Sometimes it's your fault totally, and then sometimes it's a combination of both people. That's a truck outside, and their brakes are just whatever. But I don't want to really talk about what we argued about or whatever, as much as it is Black love and relationships. I love my mother, may she rest in power. I love my mother to pieces. Love that woman. And her and I used to get into it, especially as I started becoming a teenager and then working my way into adulthood. We didn't agree on everything, and sometimes we would have some strong discussions. And sometimes we come out of it agreeing to disagree or whatever, but that had zero to do with our love for each other. And I think that among our people, sometimes we let, I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this, but sometimes we let our anger or let the way that we feel get in the way of loving each other, loving ourselves. If you really think about it, sometimes you're in an argument with yourself half the time, especially as a Black person. You're in an argument with yourself half the time. There's things in my life that I've done. I'm like, I'll never forgive myself, or I'll go to my grave thinking about it. But I just recently have revisited that, and I mean like very recently. Like I just started thinking about it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not taking any of this baggage to my grave. I'm not going to say anymore that I'll never forgive myself for this or that or whatever, because if you can't forgive yourself for different things, how are you going to forgive other people for stuff? And just learning what forgiveness is about and so on. I mean, there's a lot tied up in it, and our people in general are traumatized, under pressure, been through this and that, and then we get together, and then then the trauma comes out, and all this frustration. It's not even directed toward the person you're dealing with. You're just like frustrated in general. That's our people. Then you get people. Then you have our people like divesting, and it's like I said to you. I want you to be 100% Angela because I love 100% Angela, and I have zero doubt ever that you love me because you treat me like you love me, 24/7, and I treat you like I love you, 24/7. So, what in having discussions with you, if I can't be 100% me and you can't be 100% you, just like I said, we may as well be married to white folks and walking around on eggshells and biting our tongues and all this different stuff. How are you going to be? The Bible says, "How can two walk together except they agree?" And that doesn't mean you have to agree on every single solitary thing. But it just means like in life, in the major things about life, where your vision of where you want to be. And so, if my vision, I'm going to let Angela talk in a minute. I'm kind of rambling, but if my vision was to be materialistic and have a McMansion and two Bentleys, then you and I probably wouldn't jive because that doesn't seem to be your vision. Because your vision is, I want to live in peace and live simply and just be at peace. And fortunately, the blessing is that both of us feel that way, and that's a major thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I've rambled for a while, and I changed up on Angela. She thought we were going to be talking about something else, but that's the subject. Mm-hmm. And Angela has the floor.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm not talking about it from a biblical perspective, but just a common sense perspective of how can two walk together if they don't agree? I think the main thing you have to agree about is that if you're walking together, you're walking in the same direction and you're walking at basically the same pace. Mm-hmm. So other than that, I think you can disagree about a lot of things, but those key things, if you're walking together, because otherwise I'm walking in one direction, you walk in another direction, we're not walking together. I don't know that I necessarily, I think there are kind of three things that came up for me in terms of what you just said, mm-hmm. that, I picked up on. One, and, this is just a general statement that I kind of have come to have clarity about. I don't necessarily believe that my partner should be my everything. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe that it is their job to fulfill all of my needs. I think that there are some needs that will be met, in a love relationship, and I think that there are needs that will be met in friendships. I think that there are needs that will be met in sibling relationships. I think that there are needs that will be met in our relationships with God. I think that there are needs that will be met through our journaling and meditation,
Right, 100%.
Yeah, so I think that that's important. Sometimes in conversations with people or in my observation of people, I think that sometimes we have expectations of our partners to be our everything, and I just don't think that that's realistic.
Right.
And I think that that's for Black love or any love. So that's one. And then I don't think that everything goes in a relationship. I think that sometimes we can be more casual and more reckless with the people that we're close to than we would be with a stranger on the street.
Right.
And I think that for me, it's very important as much as possible to pay more homage and more respect in the context of my closest relationships than I would in my furthest relationships. So the closer that someone is to me, it is my desire for them to, experience my best self, mm-hmm. As opposed to them experiencing my worst self. I think that as Black people, that can be very challenging because I'm working on, one of the books one of the things that I'm working on now is a book called Be Fabulous You, A to Z, or the ABCs of Being Fabulous You, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because as Black people, because we're under so much pressure and there's so much stuff that we deal with, and I think that even as you have greater consciousness, there can, that can give you some relief in some ways, but maybe create pressure in other ways. That, in your home, that may be the only place that certain things you feel safe or comfortable to deal with and address certain things.
Right.
And so there can be a lot of pressure on the home. And that can make it difficult to remain respectful and remain calm and to always be your best. So I think that that's something that is a general tip, but I think that especially, as Black people, I think that it requires that we do a lot of work on ourselves as individuals, a lot of spiritual and emotional work, and a lot of spiritual and emotional work, so that we can be good partners to one another, so that we can be good parents to our children, so that we can be good friends, so that we can be good community members. Because there's just a lot of stuff this, that we're dealing with, that we're processing, that we are trying to make sense of, that is unfair, that is jacked up. So, but I think that it's very, very important to do that work, so that you can be respectful in your most intimate relationships, and your most intimate relationships can be those places that are the most sacred. Mm-hmm. And sort of like moving right along with that, I think that, our most intimate relationship is our relationship with the God within us, and with ourselves as emotional and spiritual beings. And I definitely agree that, the most vital work that we can do in order to be good partners, be good parents, be good community members, is that working on ourselves, respecting ourselves, learning to love ourselves, learning to accept ourselves, is the most valuable work that we can do. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, you have a point. I thought you had a third point.
I did. Those were my 3 points. I had love you, work on you, and respect the sacred space of your relationship.
Oh, okay.
And don't think that your partner is everything.
Okay. Yeah.
So the last two kind of started to dovetail, but.
Oh, okay. That where you said that not having your partner be your everything. 100% agree. That's because actually I watched a video Sister Audrey Lee did yesterday, and she was. I'm sorry, that's a bus and a truck, a dump truck. Yeah, that was loud. I may actually cut that out and then let people know that I cut it. But I just watched a video Sister Audrey Lee did yesterday, and she showed like this list of things warning signs that your partner or your spouse is going to become an abuser, even if they're not one right now, that they have the capacity to become an abuser, or probably will.
Is being controlling on the list?
Being controlling is on the list.
That's my main thing.
One of them was when you're just like they're everything.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things. And so for me, one of the things that I'm happy to me about our relationship is that I don't feel like if I disappeared off the face of the earth tomorrow, you fall apart. You'd be sad, whatever, and move on. And for me, it would be the same thing. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I like to let you know how much I value you, mm-hmm. And what I think about you. And I don't mind letting the listeners know that, just like I often tell you, it's just how I feel about it. I am so glad that I met you, and I'm so glad that I married you. And when I talk about where my life would be had I not met you and married you, like I said before, and said to you before, it was based upon the trajectory I was going in, and it wasn't like I was going to be some kind of a bum or anything like that. Far from it, because I was doing well. I was doing well before I met you, but I'm doing better, and the things that I've learned from you and the trajectory of my life is a better one than I feel like I was on. Like I said, if I met you, I wouldn't be some bum or anything, but I would still be living where I'm living, which wasn't bad, but it's not as good as what I have now. I still have that same car that I was making all those payments on. Gorgeous sports car, Samantha. That gave you the name, everything. I'd still be driving that same car and thinking about it. And now I'm glad to be rid of it. And it wasn't because you were telling me I needed to get rid of it. It was just through conversations and through examining things, examining my life, and so on. And I value what I have learned from you, and I value I value who you are in my life, and I think that that's important. Now, anybody could go overboard and be like, "Oh, I can't live without you," and all this stuff. I kind of alter that to I don't want to live without you. It's not that I can't. I wouldn't want to. Not meaning that I would die or kill myself if you wasn't there. But this is like just the best to me. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that we can talk, that we converse, and the things we converse about, and that basically we're on the same sheet. It's like well, we both already said we don't agree on every single thing. That, some things we have wide disagreements on, but we're walking in the same direction, and that's important. I had written something else down. Just about in relationships, I think it's very important for people to feel safe being who they are, and you spoke on that also. You should feel safe being who you are with the other person. You can't. It was like I said to you earlier. If you can't be 100% Angela around me, and I can't be 100% Ayapo around you, then that means we're suppressing each other. There's some problem if you can't fully be you. And like I said, I love 100% Angela. And if Angela is mad at me, then I love that mad, because that's part of Angela. And vice versa, if I'm the type of person that I flare up like a match and then just go out just that quick, then that's who I am. A lot of noise going on outside. The truck just pulled up. We live right next to a store, so people should. I know.
Are you gonna be able to cut that out?
I may be able to dampen that noise. I usually go back in and do like a noise filter, and it takes it down some, but that's kind of loud. This is a good mic, and it just gets loud. But anyway, people should be able to be who they are. And I'll say this other thing, because I wrote down 4 points. I'm just gonna go to these 3 and then give it back to you. And I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but communication is key. When communication breaks down, then you got nothing. In the military, they say when you capture the enemy, the first thing you do is separate them, so they can't communicate. Because if communication is possible, then people can bring things together, and that's why the system of white supremacy works so hard to stop us from communicating. When you look at divestors, whether it's men divestors or woman divestors, that shows a breakdown in communication. somewhere.
Break down the communication, what, with black people or
Yeah,
with
with
themselves?
it could be both. But at some point we stopped talking to each other, and then we can't get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm not gonna go on. Just like I said, I'm gonna give you the floor back because I've been going on.
Well, I guess the things that you talked about, I'm going to try to talk loud so maybe you'll be able to dampen it easier. I don't know if there's more of a contrast. But I guess the main thing that comes up for me with this conversation is balance. So I feel like, and I think that balance comes with maturity. Mm-hmm. So I think that in terms of someone being your everything, I can't live without you, and at the same time finding and making sure that you're dealing, for me, and especially when I'm talking to younger people about relationships, younger women, it's look for, is this person adding value to your life? Is this relationship adding value to your life? Or is this relationship adding drama to your life? Is it draining you? If a person is not adding value, then it's probably a relationship that's not a good match for you, especially if it's a relationship of choice. So I feel like you want, for me, that's like kind of a balance. You don't want someone who is your, I can't live without you. Like, I feel like you should be on your path. You should be doing well. If you like flowers, you should be bringing yourself flowers, and he should be bringing you something above and beyond that from a woman's perspective. Or if he's not able to bring you anything other than what you already have, then I don't see a point in, walking together. And so that's like a balance thing for me. And also I think that there's the balance between being free to be who you are and being respectful of who your partner is. And I think that, again, that's something that comes with maturity. And I guess it kind of ties into me with this idea of communication. While I think communication is important, I think there's also finding that balance of knowing when and how and why and what to communicate. Because, for example, for me, while I do value communication, I don't value communication with everybody and in all situations. If it's somebody, that I'm never going to see or never going to talk to again, or is like I don't really care about them, then I'm not going to spend my breath and my energy trying to communicate certain things to them because it's not worth it. And as Millard used to say, or as Millard said to me once, and I always remembered it, say it in breath, because at the end of your life, you're going to be wishing you had those breath. And then when to speak and what specifically to say. Because, I think that there's there's times for everything. And just because I think something, I don't think I need to communicate everything all the time to everybody. So, and I think that's part of like being free. Like, I think, that you can be free and be a whole person within the context of a relationship. But I still don't think that everything needs to be discussed with your partner. Just because I feel it or I think it, I have to say it because I'm free. I think that from my perspective is a little bit immature. Like, I think
that's wisdom.
Yeah, wisdom and maturity. So I guess those were the things that came up for me from what you said.
Yeah, those are excellent points, because that's wisdom. Again, like we had just discussed earlier, it's like you don't have to say everything. There are some things that are better left unsaid or kept to yourself. If I lost all the rent money at the casino and they're getting ready to kick us out, I think that's something we need to talk about. But everything doesn't have to be said. But while you were talking, hold on, I made a note. I really like what you said about balance and just having balance in a relationship. And the thought popped in my mind. Social media is phony. And the reason I thought that was, there's people who look at us or know about our relationship or us getting together, see us on YouTube or hear the podcast or look at our wedding online or whatever. We got married. It's online on this channel, on Ayapo Yapo channel, and they're like, oh, this is they're such a, you know, they have such a good relationship, and we do, but nobody is. It's like people who are quote unquote influencers who are always taking their picture next to some kind of a fabulous car, or men don't sound right saying that. They take care, you know, picture of this fancy car or big house and all that, and when they're on vacation and they just try to make it look like, oh, my life is just this paradise. Especially, and this is my personal feeling about these divestors, especially when they're showing like these pictures of where they've gone or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you can take a picture of any moment in time and make it look like, oh, my life is so great, and then have everybody, you know, looking at their own life thinking, well, what's wrong with mine? And then sometimes it translates into, there could be some people who watch us and listen to us, and they're like, how come my relationship with my husband or wife can't be like it is with Ayapo? How come my husband can't be more like Ayapo? Ayapo's a mess, and nobody knows it better than my wife. And so I guess what I'm trying to get at is, we do have a good relationship, but no relationship is without its bumps. You're dealing with two people who have their own personalities, who have their own thoughts and their own, you know, everything. And there's going to be arguments. There's going to be disagreements. Now, one thing I do want to say, when I say 100% accepting a person, I'm not talking about if they've beaten on you and they gambling away the rent money, or they're, you know, they're crackhead. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just a person being themselves in their humanity and having their own thoughts coming from whatever background they came from or whatever, and they're just being themselves, but are always treating you and others with as much honor and dignity as they can treat a person. I remember very distinctly that Angela told me, this is when we first met and first got together, is she said that one of the things that attracted her to me was the way that I treated other people and spoke to other people. And that's pretty much how I am. I try to be respectful all the time. And I want to apologize to everybody. There's 2 trucks out here. So that's what that noise is. And that's what that noise is in the background. And the same thing is for me with her, is that she always came off as this person that cares about people. And then as I got to know her and we got married, and I'm thinking about that one job in particular, she is always trying to figure out the way to make it a win-win for everybody, and always trying to help people to be their best, while she's yet seeking to make herself the best that she can be, as well as that's what I try to do. We have our different ways of going about it, but Angela's a little more hands-on than I am. She's, as a matter of fact, she's a lot more hands-on than I am. Because she gets out there among people. I don't do that as much, but when I am around people, I try to give my best, and I always try to give my best. But just going back to my original thought before I give it back to you, is don't look at us and say, oh, how come my wife can't be like Angela? Angela's a mess. And she's not a hot one, but all of us are a mess, especially the black people. Especially the black people who have been raised in this system. Angela, the blessing to me is that Angela came to me and she already had a very high consciousness. And mine, I was just coming into my consciousness. And so it was kind of like putting a little booster rocket on me. And that moved me forward, that propelled me forward even faster. I was already headed in that direction, but she got behind me and helped to push me back. So anyway, that's some of my thoughts. I have a few more, but I'm going to give it back to you.
I guess the one thing that, and I think it's right on what you were just saying, is this idea of surface thinking I am a meditator, and I'm a Vipassana meditator, and I do 10-day meditation retreats. And in the 10-day retreats, you're basically silent for 9 of the 10 days. And you sit basically for 10 hours a day in meditation. And your eyes are closed for the most part. One of the things that I learned, and I think that, this is important in terms of like hashtag relationship goals, is that there have been times when I was sitting, and sometimes I sit to meditate, and it's like, oh, the hour is up, because usually it's for an hour at a time, 60 minutes. And sometimes the hour is up, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's already over. I feel like I just sat down. And then sometimes I sit down, and I feel like, is my alarm broken? Is it working? Did it go off and I didn't hear it? Because it must have been about 3 or 4 hours that I've been sitting here, and I might open my eyes and it's only been like 2 or 3 minutes. So sometimes it's very difficult. When I'm meditating in a group, especially at the beginning, I would open my eyes and everybody I would see would just look like they were calmly and peacefully and serenely meditating, and I was not calmly and peacefully and serenely meditating. I think that when I was in service and I got to talk to people, because you can be a server or you can sit in this particular community. And so when you're in service, you're supposed to support the people in meditation. So they'll come to you. Like when I was a meditator, it was like one time I forgot to bring oil, and I'm like, oh, I need olive oil because my skin is so dry I can't meditate. And when you're in service, you hear like all of the things that are going on with people and all the things that they're dealing with. But when I'm sitting in the meditation hall, when I'm in the Dhamma hall, everybody looks, for the most part, peaceful and calm. And you have no idea what's going on inside. And I think that, again, is a conversation about maturity, or just when you look at someone else's relationship, you don't know what's going on inside of it. It may be, a healthy, wholesome relationship with a few problems, or it could be something that is really destructive and unhealthy for the people who are involved. Sometimes, I guess, with wisdom, you can kind of, I feel like, and I could be wrong, I can kind of get some sense of, kind of what's going on with people beneath the surface, because I'm able to look beneath the surface. Like I'm not just looking at the pictures or looking at the smiles. I'm, kind of looking beneath, or when I'm listening to people, when I'm in conversation with them, as this radio host, I can't remember his name, says, I'm listening with my inner ear. I guess it's been on my mind a lot. Or I'm looking with my inner eye, with my third eye. My third eye is open and my third ear is open. So I can go a little beneath the surface. And so I guess that's when you're dealing with social media and hashtag relationship goals, and this picture of us smiling is the end of the story, and that's all you need to know. It would be sort of, I think we have to get or be mature enough to understand that, that's a picture, that's one moment in time, that may or may not be representative of anything, but clearly that's not everything.
So. That's the thing that people want to present. Even with you, when you're picking out a picture for, say it's the magazine was going to deal with an issue of so far, or a thumbnail or what, you'll take all these pictures and you'll put up the one that best represents what you wanted to represent. You're not going to put one out where you was just about to sneeze, or your eyes were closed, or a skunk just walked by. Oh, well, you like the smell of a skunk, so that's different. But people on social media are going to always put their best out front, and that doesn't mean that they really can't be enjoying their lives. Excuse me, but I think everybody has the moments in their life where, say they're single and they're always on the beach and they're always on the go and world traveling, and then that same person in the middle of the night sometimes is just laying in bed crying because they're lonely or whatever, and then they wake up in the morning and they're actually good again. But I was thinking about that, but in terms of relationships, again, one of the reasons I felt like it was important to do this podcast was because I want people to know, right? This marriage isn't some kind of a fairy tale, and marriage is work. Relationships are work. They don't have to be hard work, but they are work, and it's just about being realistic with your expectations in a relationship, being realistic about relationships. You got like Kevin Samuels out here, and they talk about high value man or high value woman and all this, and they always attach it to some kind of money or whatever. Yeah, a woman is going to want, and this, I know this is going to sound chauvinistic, but a woman wants a man who can take care of her and provide. I mean, that's just how it is. If she's on her own, she's still worried about providing for herself. Or whether if a man's on his own, he's worried about providing for himself. People want to feel secure and provided for. That doesn't mean that they want to live extravagantly necessarily, but that's where becoming realistic to me just comes into it. I think a high value wife is someone, and a high value husband is someone who has a moral center where they love themselves and they love others. They respect themselves and they respect others. They respect their spouse. They love honor. Motorcycle. They love, honor, and respect their self and their spouse. And I think a lot of us miss the fact that the love, honor, and respect starts from the inside and radiates outward. You can't be void of love, honor, and respect for yourself, and then seek to find it within someone else. And that's one of the reasons that, as a pro-black man, I typically look at people who are in these, or look at divestors as self-hating. And I even reserve the fact that I could be wrong about that. I'm not in anybody's head or in anybody's mind, but from the outside looking in, there has to be, to me, there has to be some level, some degree, even if it's 1% of self-hate going on. And it might not be as extreme as self-hate, but there's something went wrong, something went sideways. Because if you love, honor, and respect yourself as a black person, and you see the value in yourself as a black person, and that will cause you to see it in other black people. And that doesn't mean that I want to go and just marry some black person who isn't walking in the same direction I'm walking just because they're black. That doesn't mean I want to get with somebody trifling just because they're black. But it means that I will take the time to seek out someone who is going in my direction, someone who isn't trifling, and not basing their worth, their value upon what's in their bank account or what they're driving or what their house or clothes looks like. I mean, like I said, they can't be trifling, but at the same time, if they're an honorable person, how can you go wrong with an honorable person? Because an honorable person is going to do things that are honorable. And part of being honorable is providing. Part of being honorable is being honest. And so on. So if we look for those things, then I think you can't go wrong looking or seeking out people and businesses, black businesses that are honorable. That doesn't mean that the black business won't make a mistake, but they're trying to do things and swimming against the tide of something that was set up against them. But they're trying their best to be honorable, do the right things. And so, and I'm kind of rambling, about to give it back to you. If I'm dealing with a black company that say is a black Wi-Fi company, and then the Wi-Fi goes out, my attitude shouldn't be, oh, see, black companies, their stuff goes out. Well, Time Warner constantly goes out. Freaking, I hear horror stories about whatever that is that's on the West Coast. I think it starts with the C, Comcast. I hear horror stories from the West Coast about
Comcast down south.
Yeah, how was it?
Terrible. Yeah. That's when I cut off my cable and started going to YouTube.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. But yet we will continue to use Comcast, but continue to use these services. But we can turn to a black one. Then the first mistake they make, oh, see these black, and we need to treat companies, each other, and ourselves. We need to run ourselves and our people some slack. And now I'm passing the mic to you, figuratively.
Okay. I don't know. I had a few points. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about or address is my thoughts on. I feel like when I look at interracial relationships from the outside looking in, I don't have any personal experience of it, so it's all theoretical. I look at it in the context of the society. I feel like in an ideal, balanced world, I think that there would be some black people who might be married to white people or, whatever, a person from one, I think that that's possible in an ideal world because, But I think that when I look in the society that I'm in, I feel like when I see interracial couples, and I can't speak to each individual person and why they make their choice, but I think overall it is a reflection to me of hatred of black people's hatred of ourselves, that has been so ingrained. And now I don't really have a way of understanding, the white people's side of it, except that, actually I think that white people are always trying to, or whites are always trying to ingest us and get us and have our as homes. Right. And so maybe that's their motivation, and we feel like, oh, I've come up, I have a beautiful woman, because a white woman is the epitome of beauty. Right. Or, I have a wonderful man because a white man is the epitome of success. And from, men, typically I think that women are looking for success, material success, material provision. And I think that, a lot of times men are looking for emotional support and,
and a status symbol.
Beauty from women. Mm-hmm. I mean, depending on where you are developmentally. So, yeah, I don't think that in an absolute, I don't think that a black person being with a white person is a sign of self-hate. But I definitely think in the context of this society that hates blackness and hates black people and also loves blackness and wants to eat up blackness, I think that you can see that reflected in all sorts of things, including marriages and interracial relationships and stuff like that. Right. In terms of high value, I think that it depends on the person. I feel like, what are your values? What is important to you? And then based on that, I think that it is wise to look for someone who is, so I feel like if you are a materially oriented person and that's the only thing that you're looking for, then I think that a high value man for you would be someone who can provide a lot materially. If your value system is, I'm looking for someone who is a trophy wife in the context of this society, someone who's going to look good on my arm and make me look like, I got the best woman out there. Right. If you're looking for physical things and the way someone looks and how that's going to be perceived by others, then I think it makes absolute sense that a high value woman, is young, doesn't have children. I mean, so I think it just depends on your value system. That's not my value system.
Totally agree.
So so that was that. And then when you were saying relationships, our work, they don't have to be a lot of work, or relationships are hard or whatever. I agree with that, and I think that relationships are hard work. I think some of the hardest, for me, I feel like as human beings, we really need to be in relationship with other people. And that is an important part of our path of growth and development. That there's some work that we cannot do. There's some work that we need to do on ourselves that we cannot do in isolation. That being in relationship with others helps us to grow and develop. Now, I think that definitely, so I feel that relationships are work. And I feel that an important part of that work is doing the work on yourself. But I feel like do the work on yourself so that you can be in relationship. When things come up in relationships that, stimulate you, use that stimulation for your personal growth and development. And, I feel like as you continue to cycle through that loop of, working on yourself, being triggered or some issue coming up, because I feel like that's what we're working through issues. We're untying knots. So when the knots come up, that's your opportunity. That's your cue to go back and work on yourself. Or, I feel like it's a cycle. It's an ongoing thing. So I feel like relationships are work, and it's beautiful and it's important. And that's why we're here. And then the other thing, this is looping back. I went in reverse order. I saw this image on Facebook of, it looked like somebody on the beach, like you could see their knees, and then there was a beach in the background. Right. Did you see it? I
go on and describe it.
But, and then so it was talking about perspective. And so then they took another shot of that image that appeared to be someone sitting on the beach, and it was actually two hot dogs up against a tablet that had a beach scene on it. Saw it. So the hot dogs looked like their knees, and the image of the beach on the beach scene looked like like someone was actually on the beach, depending on how close the shot was taken. Right. And I think that that was in terms of images and social media, and we create things, and I think that I feel like there's something to be said for having a public image. We have a store next door, and unfortunately, sometimes it feels like my pantry. So sometimes I run to the store next door as if I'm in my own house, just running to the store.
It's that close.
It's that close. But when I go to town, I actually will usually put on earrings, put on lipstick, pull myself together. But I don't pull myself together to go to the compost, where it's actually, I'm kind of in public, but in my head, I'm just going to the compost.
Right, the backyard.
Yeah, but it's so, but I don't think there's anything wrong with, pulling yourself together and presenting an image. I think that's one aspect of who we are. Astrologically, I feel like that's your first house. But don't let your first house be your last house. Don't let your image be all that there is. Right. I mean, But yeah, I feel like, there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself and caring about how you're perceived. But that shouldn't be all of it.
Okay, well, let me go back to something you said. Well, you saying it's hard work being married to me?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard work being married to you too. Okay. But you know what? Writing for me is hard work. But I love it.
I don't feel like there's anything wrong with hard work. Our work is good.
Exactly. Because if you love your work, it can be. If you love busting bricks all day, that doesn't make it easy work. It makes it hard work that you enjoy, and so that's it. So
I think hard work is good. And I feel like
if you enjoy that work. But what if both of us were a couple of creeps,
right?
And it was hard work? That would be a nightmare.
Right. And I think that there is some wisdom, because there's some like sometimes you can be guided by, if I love it, then I should go forward. But then there's some work that you need to do. It just don't feel good, and it's not going to be fun, but it still needs to be done.
Right.
So like when you're like, well, I'll drink this juice because it's good for me. It may not taste good.
Right.
But if you were just guided by what tastes good, what feels, then, so it's like finding that balance.
You're right. And that's the thing. Because I love my metaphors, and now thinking about writing, that there's some days, and this, that I don't feel like writing. And I sit my behind at the desk, and I start tapping away. I don't always complete my target number of pages, but I get something down on paper, even if it's not the best. I get something put down on, I'm saying put down on paper, but into the computer. And it's because I love, the novel that I'm working on. I love being a writer. I love the hard work of writing, but sometimes I don't love it, the act of writing. But I always love the book that I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
and always want to continue to put into that. So even when I don't feel like it, I will still do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that marriage and relationships can be that same way. If you love each other, if you love, honor, and respect each other, I'm not talking about being married to some outlaw or some, when I say outlaw, I mean some janky person. If you're in a relationship with them, that's a, that's a whole nother subject. But if you're
Are
in a
they adding
relationship,
value to you? Are they
Are
helping
they
you
adding
grow and
value?
be a better person?
Right.
Are their values in alignment with yours?
or are they beating on you and making you feel less than you are, or don't know how to talk to you right, or don't care to, would rather be with some other woman or some other man, depending on who it is, and that's not. Don't put work into that. That's like if I was writing a book that even I knew was a piece of crap, but I still force myself to go work on it every day. I'm just wasting my time.
Mm.
But if it's something that I think, oh, this is going to be a bestseller, yeah, I'm gonna, then you go on and put the time in. So that's enough of that analogy. But that's the, as I was thinking about it, just relationships among our people are so very important, because first comes the self-love, then comes the love for each other. And if we love each other and can be in relationships with each other, even if it's a friendship or meeting in groups and discussing the same thing and moving the same way, just like Sister Algelie was discussing the STEP program, and that's black men teaching young black men to young black men and boys and moving in one direction, and you can't form that kind of organization and do that type of thing if you don't even love yourself as a black person, and so that's where the relationship comes in. And also, I just can't emphasize enough, because to me, from what I see, at least in the social media world, I see so much of people seeing things and they just think, oh, this is a fairy tale, and their marriage is just like your marriage is. Mm-hmm. It has its ups and downs, but you love each other. Mm-hmm. And you honor each other and respect each other and take care of each other. So I see you made some notes, so I'm giving you the floor back.
Did you finish what you had to say?
Yeah, I was pretty much finished.
I guess the thing that I was thinking about is practices. Like, what are our practices? And when you get up in the morning, and I've done this, I've gone to jobs that I don't want to be at, but I get up and I go there every morning, 5 days a week, sometimes 6 days a week, and it's like that's a practice. So I'm getting up and I'm spending my time and I'm investing my energy into something that I don't care about, right. And something that is out of alignment with who I am. And so I feel like love is a practice. Loving yourself is a practice. Being a loving partner is a practice. Being a loving, value-adding member of a community is a practice. And I feel like we show up, and that's based on your value system. If I value this, I think it's based on your value system partially, and it can be based on joy. And sometimes you can use your joy to guide you to those things that, as writers, as artists, sometimes we say, oh, I don't feel inspired, or I only write when I feel inspired. And so I think that there is something to be said for having a practice of showing up even when you don't feel inspired.
Right.
My meditation practice. Sometimes it feels good, sometimes it don't feel good. But my practice is few and far between now. But you show up, you get on the mat. You sit and you sit day in and day out. As a yoga practitioner, you get on your mat day in and day out. It's not necessarily just when it's a practice. It's a practice, and so showing up in love is a day in and day out practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like sometimes it's easier than other times. Sometimes it feels better than other times. But if that's something that you've determined that you're going to do, that's good for you, that's adding value to you, your family, and your community, then on the bad days you show up too.
Mm-hmm.
In the bad moments you show up too, to the best of your ability. We're all human. But I definitely think this idea of practice is important.
I also think that self-awareness is important.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there are people who might see my videos or listen to the podcast and so on, and they'll be like, Ayapo's, he's all right. And I am. I think I'm all right in ways, and I'm a mess in other ways. But when I talk about self-awareness, sometimes we need to examine ourselves. A lot of times I think we need to examine ourselves, not to the degree that you're beating yourself up, but that you examine yourself. And even with what we just talked about, I realize I have a really bad habit. I'm telling on myself. I have a really bad habit of interrupting people when they're speaking. I'll have a thought, but see, I just learned something from you, and started doing what you're doing. As you may have noticed, now when we talk, I sit down and I take notes as thoughts come to me, because my fear becomes, if I don't say this right now, I'm going to lose my thought. And then I'll never be able to, I won't be able to say it or express it the way I want to. But through this podcast, and through the podcast that we do, I notice you sitting and you'll be listening and taking notes and of what comes into your mind, so that you can remember what it was that you thought about. And during this one, I was doing the same thing. That's something I just literally just now learned from you. And part of, if you don't mind me saying, a part of what got us heated when we were doing the first podcast was because Angela was talking about something and she was on a train of thought and I interrupted her. And not only did I interrupt her, but I interrupted her and I'm going on about whatever. And then she just totally lost her train of thought. Even though she had written her thought down, she had it like clear in her mind what she was about to say. And she was riding that way. And I just derailed it and she couldn't get it back. In part because she was upset because I interrupted her. And rightly so, by the way, that she was upset. And so when I talk about a person examining themselves, it's easy to look at the other person and say, oh, you're to blame, you did this, that, the other. Sometimes you can reflect, and it's like I said at the beginning, sometimes you can reflect and you'll realize that, yeah, it was the other person's fault. But sometimes you reflect and you look back and say, yeah, that was on me. And that comes with, I think, wisdom, and it comes with self-reflection and being honest with yourself about who you are and what you do. And it wasn't just in this one instance. I'm thinking back to when Mabusi was here, and I have this habit of interrupting people when they're speaking, and I know that's because I personally know that's because I'm concerned that I'm going to lose my thought. But now I think I'm going to try to get into a practice of when someone else is talking, if we're like in a group like we were that night, and we're just talking about stuff, and we're just, kind of shooting the breeze. But then there's some important things that do come up. That's when I'm going to reach and get a pad and kind of write down, get a little pad like you have right there, not one as big as this one I have, but just write down what some of my thoughts were so the person can finish out what they have to say. And because that, to me, that's a problem. If you're interrupting people in the middle of their train of thought. I don't like people interrupting me when I'm on a train of thought because it throws me off. So why would I do that to somebody else? Type of thing. So I just saw you make a note. I'm pretty much finished with that part of it.
Yeah, but I was just making a note that in this, I don't know if it's necessarily, I guess I think it is related to relationships in that from being in, I do some work called reevaluation co-counseling. And I started off doing it when I was a college student. We had a self-help support group on campus, a Black women's self-help support group. And I got trained to be a facilitator in reevaluation co-counseling. But one of the key tenets of that work is that we all have the answers inside of us and that we need space to talk it out in order to be able to connect with those answers in us, connect with the truth in us. I would say connect with the good or the God in us. But one of the things that I remember learning and training that stuck with me is that a lot of times when we're listening to other people, we're not actually listening to other people. A lot of times when we're listening to other people, we're thinking about what we want to say and what happened to us. And a lot of our conversations are actually, oh yeah, girl, that happened to me too. And the person's like, and so it's sort of difficult to like really feel that you're deeply heard or that you're deeply being listened to.
Right.
And so that's why I started writing stuff down, because it kind of frees me up to listen. If I have a thought and then I'm listening to you, even if I don't interrupt, and I'm like, okay, I got to remember. Right. It's difficult for me to actually listen to you because I'm very focused on what I'm thinking. So it's kind of challenging though, because when I write stuff down, I feel like then I'm missing some of what's going on. But I just try to dump it so that then I can be available as much as possible so writing frees me to listen, like taking, but usually it's just like a note or something to draw. It's not like the whole, full thought. That's why my train of thought got lost, because, as I was talking, I was going someplace else and then I didn't remember where I was going. Right.
Well, that's what I've been doing. Just making just a quick note to jog my memory, and then that way you can think. Because also it's a sign listening to someone. Truck. I'm gonna cut that one out probably. That was and maybe not. But listening to someone, giving them your full attention, to me, is one of the greatest signs of respect that you can give to someone, especially when you think about the nature of time. You can't get time back after it passes. So if you're reading something someone wrote, if you're looking at someone's art or listening to someone, this is time that's passing. This is time in your life that you're giving to them. There's like almost no greater show of respect that you can give a person than to give them your time and genuinely give them your time. And you're absolutely right. If I'm sitting and all I'm thinking of is the next thing that I'm going to say, then I'm not fully listening to you or whoever it is I'm speaking with or conversing with. And again, it's so important to listen to another person, because even there have been people that I have like 100% disagreed with, but I heard them out and I see where they're coming from. I still don't agree, but at minimum, I at least understand where they're coming from. And if I understand where a person's coming from, then possibly I can persuade them. Or if someone completely understands where I'm coming from, and this has happened in my life, then they know how to they know how to speak to me. They know how to speak to where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it persuades me, sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of those kind of discussions or conversations, minimum, you can truly say, well, we'll just have to agree to disagree, because you're genuinely understanding each other and knowing where each other, what each other's views are and why they're holding that view. You just say, I just don't agree with it. I understand that, I just don't agree with it. Mm-hmm. And I understand why you think that way about whatever. And I just don't agree. And I think that makes it so two people can continue walking in the same direction, depending on what the thing is. Mm-hmm. There are some things that break deals, but then even if the deal is broken, there's no love lost or no anger, because you understand where the other person is coming from. Mm-hmm. So that's why communication is so important, like real communication among our men and our women. And I think that would go a long way to end a lot of divestment. But beginning with loving yourself first. I mean, truly loving your Black self first.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm invested in ending divestment. I guess I don't really care about it, but I definitely am invested in increasing our investment in love in ourselves. So when we were talking about, well, one thing I think is listening, or like listening is healing. Mm-hmm. Seeing someone is healing. Like when you really truly can like see someone for who they are, that is, and hold space for them, or just see them for who they are. I think that there's something definitely healing in that. I think that, for example, in the writers group, for me, my observation of the way that you read and consider other people's work, it's like really seeing them or really hearing their voice. It's part of that same thing of seeing someone, really hearing someone, really being with someone, and giving your full attention. So I guess that's it. I think that, being able to give your full attention to yourself, like mirror work is where you actually look at yourself in the mirror. You actually look at your eyes, or when you do full body work and you like look at your body and like, I love, my belly, I love my butt, I love this, like it's like really fully considering something, and holding it in love is healing. And I think that as Black people, the more that we can fully consider, fully see and hear each other is important. I remember you saying that you kind of had to learn, or this is how I heard it, you kind of had to learn to look at like Esther Rolle, for example, and to like see her beauty. Right. And I definitely feel like, there is, it's a practice. I feel like, there was a systematic way that I learned to see white people as attractive. Even, there are tricks that you do in movies so that the lead characters, we recognize them as the lead characters, like through mechanical things that they do or technical things, lighting. Yeah. But I feel like there is a practice, like there was a way that we learned to love whiteness and white things, and value whiteness and white society, and value processed foods and value, and and there's on the other side, there's a way that I had definitely learned to appreciate whole foods, or okay, this is brown rice, how do I work with it? Okay, this is an onion, how do I chop it up? Bell peppers, carrots, like how do I make food? How do I season food? It's a practice. So yeah.
I want to say this: when I'm talking about divestors, it's not that I'm trying to stop divestment or trying to end divestment. I'm looking at it like this: since we got here, I've lost 75 pounds. I consciously did not try to lose weight. I consciously did not try to lose weight. I got sick a couple times. When I get sick, I tend not to eat. But also, where we are, there's accessibility to processed foods, but mostly I was already a vegetarian when we got here, but I started eating better. I am 100% all sugar. Don't crave it. Don't. There's been times that people have offered me stuff that's sugary and I won't take it.
Did you eat that pineapple pastry I brought?
Yeah, I ate that. That didn't have sugar in it, right?
Yes, it did.
Oh, I thought that was just like a wheat pastry with pineapple in it.
No, and it didn't even look wheat at the outside. It looked like a croissant. It looked like
that was half of that. But the thing is, I don't worry about stuff like that because to one degree or another, if you get something from the store that's not like fresh fruits and vegetables, there's going to be some kind of sugar in it somewhere. Like even that bread I like to get, there's a little bit of sugar in that. But I mean, like just having this sugar craving.
When you said you were 100% off, I'm like, I don't know.
When I say 100% off, I mean
you don't mean it literally.
Yeah, not literally. Like I just totally have gotten away from all sugar. I'm saying that I don't go out and buy candy bars and Little Debbie's and junk cookies and all this stuff and eat them. But getting away from sugar is like trying to get away from salt. If you eat anything that's processed, that someone else prepared or is processed in any way, because I will get those crackers, especially when you make chili. And I know those have salt in them, and I know that they have sugar in them.
They have some mess in them.
So when I say I got away from sugar, is kind of a different thing.
Okay, can I say something?
I don't crave it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's like a low quality. I mean, that's like because it was like freshly baked and they made it there. It is like crappy food, but it's not like the same as something that could sit on a shelf for 29 million weeks. I mean, it's a different kind of crap, but
right. But typically it's gonna have some kind of salt in it.
Oh, the pastry has some kind of salt.
No, not the pastry, but that what you brought me, that rice and beans.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the salad.
yeah.
And
but I cook with
I
salt.
didn't eat the platans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't eat those.
I'm
not crazy. I'm like I tasted it. Most people are. I guess a lot of people like it. Yeah, I'm not crazy.
I always tell them not to put them on mine.
But,
plus, they're fried. I mean, it's like
right. And so a plantain is like a banana, kind of bananish, and they come. Sometimes they give them to you raw.
Raw?
Like not raw, but they cook it a little. That was like way cooked. I thought that was some kind of meat. Remember when I first saw it? And I was like, that looks like meat.
Right.
And he was like, no, it's plantain. But I'm not a fan of it either. But you brought me the rice and the beans and salad.
Did they have any vegetables in there?
Just that tomato, that slice of tomato.
On the salad?
Was on all of it, on top of all of it. Which was fine.
Because sometimes they'll have some, like this the other day it had like sauteed vegetables with it, so I didn't know.
Right.
Sometimes
I like that, and it was like when you got that quesadilla and had all that cheese in there, and you're not really a cheese person, especially processed cheese. But people, when you get something that you didn't cook yourself, it's always going to be a crapshoot. So anyway, I was just saying that to say I got off the sugar, I lost that weight, but my goal was not to lose weight. Mm-hmm. My diet changed, and losing weight was a natural consequence of me changing my diet. So when I'm talking about divestment stuff, I'm not talking in terms of ending divestment. If our people start loving ourselves and loving each other and getting with each other, as a natural consequence, divestment will drop. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be like your express purpose to stop divestment.
I just thought I heard you say you want to stop. If we want to stop by divestment or something like that.
No, I may have said something like that. If I did, then I misspoke because I don't think that you can stop it.
Oh, and
I don't think that's the kind of thing that can be stopped. But I do think that it can be dropped.
Right,
by not focus. You don't have to. A person doesn't have to focus on it. It'll just be a natural consequence. Like I didn't have to focus on losing weight. It's just a natural consequence of me changing this area or fixing this area.
I definitely agree with that.
So if we fix this area, not only divestment, but gunning each other down, doing cheating each other, and so on, will all that will start to change as a natural consequence. And that's why I try to make my focus be on us lifting ourselves up, and separating, and loving ourselves. So I went off on kind of a tangent about the food, but
I know I started it.
I don't think you did. Go.
But anyway, is that it? Are we finished?
What was that? You didn't have any more notes?
I don't think so.
Okay, well.
Wait, how long are we?
We're at an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, let's cut
Yeah,
it.
well, hold my hand.
For what?
What, the little argument that we had at the beginning, you'll never know about because I don't even think I have that recording. So what happened was private, but I just want to openly say to everybody that I was the one that was in the wrong. I was 100% wrong, and it's my fault, and it's not on you at all.
But I don't think you have to apologize publicly because it's a private matter and we've resolved it privately.
Understood, but I just wanted to say you're sitting there wearing that bonnet, and so it's just a reflex.
I don't have on a bonnet. Oh, you talking about those people?
I know, everybody that knows. Yeah, take off the bonnet now that I'm finished apologizing.
And it's not a bonnet, it's a beret.
It was a bonnet. Beret. If you know what we're talking about, you know what we're talking about. You don't, you don't.
If you don't, we just wasted 38 seconds of your time.
Of your life. So I do, as always, want to promote Sister Ajali Shabaz's book, This Black. It's available on Amazon in both hard copy and digital formats. It's an excellent book. Angela's still reading it. I have read it. It's a wonderful book. I'm looking forward to the sequel. She has a name for it, but she hasn't said that name yet, the title yet. I also want to mention the book Furnace of Affliction. The world has become irradiated due to what happened in Fukushima over a decade ago, and it's like the saying, you may not believe God exists, but God knows you exist. You can believe all this. You can believe the world's not irradiated as much as you want. That doesn't change the fact that it's irradiated and that radiation is affecting you. The book Furnace of Affliction is about cures for radiation. It's about chelating radiation out of your system and how you can protect you and yourself and your family and your loved ones and friends from this radioactive nightmare that we presently live in. So I want to promote those two books. That's also available on Amazon in hard copy, and you can also read it in digital format. I also want to mention the book, The Path to Brightness. That's by T.J. Riley. I'm always wanting to say R.J. for some reason. T.J. Riley. It's a good read. I wrote a review on it. By the way, Furnace of Affliction and This Black, to my knowledge, still all have both have 5-star ratings. If they don't, some of the ratings are from people who are not verified purchasers. Though Angela did mention to me that a person could have borrowed the book from someone or whatever. So just because it's not a verified person doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't read it.
But it's likely in this case.
But it's likely in this case
that
it's just haters who don't want to see her succeed or promote what she's putting out. That's my take on it. I think it's haters that just are trying to bring her rating down. But The Path to Brightness is also a 5-star book. And I've added my review to it. as well as Sister Roger Lee's books. So that's available on Amazon. It's available on Goodreads, and also available from Barnes and Noble, and at some of your local bookstores. You're gonna hear a jump at the end of this because I went off on a tangent at the end, because what I went into was basically going into another podcast. So we want to thank you for listening to this edition of the Draped Maniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, with my beautiful wife, Angela.
Bye.
As always, wishing you safety, security, and sanity through separation. And as always, at this same time next week, we will see you on the run.
On the run.
And thank you again for listening to the Draptomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOEAIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.